Hi guys, Josh at AK Beards and Books. Today I'm doing my September wrap-up, which will also include the results of the Tome Infinity and Beyond Readathon. Crazy hands going everywhere. I hope you enjoy. So guys, September was quite a good reading month for me actually. It was a bit more mixed than some of my other months have been. So I read 7 books, I believe it was, 2 graphic novels, 5 standard books. I also DNF'd 2 books on top of that. So I started 9 books altogether. I'll talk through them all individually, but what I'll do is I will start off on my Tome Infinity and Beyond books, just to talk about that a bit more. So if you follow me on social media, I did update it quite often, say what I was reading at the point and where I ended up as part of the readathon. So I ended up on Mercury, yeah? Fellow Mercuryites. What do you call people from Mercury? It's a question. So I read 4 of the 5 books that I aimed for within the 2 weeks of Tome Infinity. The first one being Days of Future Past by X-Men. This is quite a well-known storyline for Marvel and for X-Men. It's one of the biggest storylines in the X-Men world, at least. Also includes characters from various other Marvel projects, especially things like the Fantastic Four. They're quite prominent in Days of Future Past. This anthology starts right at the beginning, which I think was, I want to say it was like the 80s or the 70s where the storyline first began, and it goes through the years and as the comics get more and more modern as they go. If you're an X-Men fan, it's definitely one I would recommend. If you're not an X-Men fan, there's quite a lot to read. I mean, it's a good 300-page graphic novel, and I know it's a graphic novel, so people think that's not that difficult, but there is still quite a lot to get through. So it's definitely one I would recommend, but only if you are a graphic novel Marvel X-Men fan. I gave it a 9 out of 10, I think. Can't remember. It's a little while ago now. I'm pretty sure I gave it a 9 out of 10. I probably would have given it a 10 out of 10, but I found the earliest comics a little bit slow, but that's probably just down to age. The second up was one that I have already done a review video for, and that was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. As I mentioned, I've already done a review video, so I will put a link for this above. I won't talk about it anymore, other than to say it's absolutely beautiful. I gave it a solid 10 out of 10. It's a must read for anyone, basically. It's such a short book, you really won't take a lot of time to get through this. I thought it was beautiful, magical, absolutely amazing. Watch my review. Book number 3 in Tome Infinity and Beyond was Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Now this is one I strategically picked, being that it's quite a small book, 200 and something pages I believe, but it was really interesting and really enjoyable. It's the first Ray Bradbury book that I read, and I do plan on reading some more of his work, so if you've read more, let me know down in the comments what you'd recommend I read. But for those of you that don't know, the story behind Fahrenheit 451 is it is set in a futuristic world where books are banned essentially, and we follow a firefighter who, a firefighter or a fireman I think they're called, it might be a fireman. But their job is to burn books essentially, so they look for people who have smuggled in books or are hiding books and they burn them. They do this because they believe books sort of elicit an emotional response and they instigate how you feel and they change how you feel. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but it was really good. I think I gave this one a 9 out of 10. Or maybe an 8 out of 10. The reason I gave it maybe slightly lower is because it does start off a little bit slow. Again, it's a very old book, so it's just a writing style preference is probably why it starts so slow. But once the story builds up and it gets going, I found the main character really interesting, I found the story really interesting, and my favourite bit about this was Ray Bradbury does a little excerpt at the end where he explains where the ideas for the story came from, and about how he believes if the world carried on as it was at the time, or if people just stopped reading, then books, there'd be no need for firefighters because books would cease to exist. And it's quite a sad thing to think about, to be fair. I mean, everyone watching this video will be a book fan. We're all book fans on booktube, but I suppose it's crazy to think how many people don't read or don't read regularly. But I'm saying that as someone that is passionate about reading, so I am slightly biased, but it was really interesting. Definitely one I'd recommend. As I said, really short story. I did it in I think 2 days, something like that, so you'll get through it really quickly. Definitely pick it up. And finally, for Tome Infinity and Beyond, I read The Ask and the Answers, which is book 2 of the Chaos Walking trilogy. Now, I have raved about Patrick Ness many a time on my channel. I'm a really big Patrick Ness fan. I actually haven't read a lot of his books because, as you can see, I've got a lot of books, so I can't get to them all as quickly as I'd like. I think Patroness is beautiful. Again, I touched on this in my A Monster Calls review, so definitely check that out if you're interested in Patroness books. I talked about why I believe his writing is so good. There's just something that hits me with Patroness's writing, something that I connect to really well with it, and I don't even know if it's something I can explain, it just works for me. I can't really explain the Ask and the Answers, because to do that I will have to give away spoilers from book 1, and I don't want to do that just in case any of you haven't read it. But this is a really underrated YA series. The film for the first book, The Knife of Never Letting Go, is coming out towards the end of the year, I believe. So if you're interested in the story, now is a good time to pick it up and possibly read it before the film comes out. That's just how I like to do adaptations myself. So let me know if you've read this. I'm going to be ordering book 3 in the next couple of weeks, so I'll probably try and get to it next month. But I can't wait to finish it. I think I gave this one a 9 out of 10. I'm giving really high scores this month so far. That's about to change, don't get me wrong. But really, really enjoyed it. It's a great series. Patroness is just, I think he's just brilliant. He won't be for everyone, but he is for me. Next up, and this is actually one I read before Tome Infinity and Beyond, so I had a couple of days before the readathon started and I wanted a quick graphic novel, so I read Under the Red Hood, which is a really good Batman DC graphic novel. So the story of Under the Red Hood, we follow the Red Hood as he goes into Gotham and he starts to fight not only the bad guys, as in the Joker, the gangsters of the city, but also the good guys. He's not a fan of Batman. Any Batman fans will know, or at least be able to do a good guess in terms of who is under the Red Hood, especially if you played the Arkham Knight Batman game, because it has a very similar storyline. Spoilers, I apologise. Really, really good graphic novel. I gave this one a 10 out of 10. I'm a really big Batman fan, so that was always going to happen. It's got a really great storyline. The emotional side is done really well, and we see a good side of Bruce Wayne as well as the character under the Red Hood, so I would definitely recommend it if you're a Batman fan. Now, next up, again, this is one I read before Tome Infinity and Beyond. I read The Woman in Black. I've rejigged all my books because my Stephen King shelf is now going down onto 2 alongside my Lego. And I can't find The Woman in Black, so I can't hold it up to show you. I apologise for that, but most people will know the story of The Woman in Black. So The Woman in Black is a relatively old story which focuses on a young lawyer who was sent to the English countryside to be involved in an estate where a lady has just died. So he has to go through her house, find any sort of receipts, any legal documents essentially to help clarify who owns what within the estate. And when he gets there, he starts to see the woman in black, who's the sort of ghostly figure of the town. And it quickly expands from there. Now, I enjoyed The Woman in Black, but it doesn't really kick off until probably the last 20-30 pages, is the honest answer. I enjoyed it, but I knew where it was going. The Woman in Black is a very well-known English story. There's a film that Daniel Radcliffe was in, and it's a very well-known stage show in the UK as well. So it's a story that I knew well. I enjoyed the book, but if I hadn't have known the story and where it was going, I probably would have put it down. I did this as a buddy read with Marina Ray, can't get my words out, and we both had the same feelings on the book. It got good towards the end, but it's a very slow story. I gave it a 6 out of 10. It's okay. I'm probably being generous with a 6 out of 10, but I'm in a good mood, so it's what I do. Next up, another one that I really, really enjoyed. This is Midnight's Lair by Richard Lehman. Again, this is an author that I hadn't read before. I picked this up in my local charity shop purely because Stephen King did a bit at the top saying about how good Richard Lehman was, and if I see Stephen King writing something on a book, I tend to pick it up. I will explain why I'm no longer going to do that in a minute, but for this book, it was brilliant. Again, this is a relatively short book. That was my theme for the month. I didn't want anything too thick and too heavy. I really enjoyed Midnight's Lair. So we follow a team of, I don't want to say cave divers, but it's essentially a tour group that goes into an underground cave, and they're on a tour, and when they're in there, events start to happen up above ground that mean they can't get out essentially. So there is a fire that breaks out, the escalators break, and they can't, the lift breaks. I was thinking elevator then, but I remembered I'm not American. The lift breaks, they can't get out, and it's the story of the team that are trapped underneath. So the light starts to die, people start to panic, and there are other horror elements that come in as well. I won't say much more because I will be spoiling it. This was really, really good. This is the closest thing I've found to Stephen King that isn't written by Stephen King and doesn't feel like someone trying to copy Stephen King. And remember why I'm saying that, because I'll be ranting about another book in a moment. I really enjoyed it. I gave this one, I can't remember what I gave this one. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, so that would be about an 8. Definitely one I'd recommend Stephen King fans. It definitely has a Stephen King feel, but with Richard Lehman's own twist on horror. I will definitely read more by the author. If you've read more, again, let me know in the comments what you'd recommend, because I'm definitely interested in picking some more. Look at how cool this cover is. Look at that. That's retro. Right, on to the less positive. So as I mentioned, I DNF'd 2 books in September, which is something that I don't like doing. Book number 1 was June. Now I say I've DNF'd June, and technically I have DNF'd June, but I'm calling it a temporary DNF because I do plan on trying to reread this at some point. I don't think it was a great one to pick in a readathon. And by that, when I say I don't think it was a great one to pick in a readathon, obviously there were time constraints in terms of how quickly I had to get through the books. June is very slow, very slow. It's kind of Game of Thronesy in the politics and, you know, the people trying to oust each other in terms of I want to be king and not you. It's that sort of style, but in space. So I thought I'd enjoy that because I like space and I love anything Game of Thronesy, but it was just so slow. I got to just over 100 pages and I had to stop because I genuinely was falling asleep in my car on my lunch reading it, and that's not a good sign for a book. That's really not a good sign. I will read it again soon. I had a recommendation from Dane over at Dane Reads to just read sort of 20 pages a day before bed, and that is probably something that I will try and do in the near future because I am really intrigued with June because I know it's seen as a sci-fi classic. I played some of the video games that are based on the story when I was younger, and again I really enjoyed them, so I do want to read it, but I've got so many books at the minute that I really want to read and I'm passionate about reading, that reading one that felt really slow just isn't working. So I got 100 pages in. I'm not going to rate it because I didn't finish it. I will come back to it, but probably no time soon. And finally, the second book that I DNF'd and that I feel like I need a bit of a rant about. So I got exactly 101 pages in to The Chalk Man. Again, I picked this up because Stephen King said it was good and I trust Stephen King. But I don't think I'm going to go for that logic anymore in terms of just picking up books that Stephen King recommends, because I really didn't enjoy this. I found it really average, I suppose is the best way of putting it, and I'm probably being polite by saying average. The author does a little sort of briefing at the start of the book where she explains about her reading habits and how she got into writing horror, and she mentions that she, when she was young, was reading, you know, James Herbert, Stephen King, authors like that, and you can tell that it influences her writing. The problem I have with that is, to me, this felt like a Stephen King fan trying to write something in the Stephen King style and genre. A lot of the stuff that happens in there is, obviously, it's not like Stephen King's the only author in the world, so please take this with a pinch of salt, but it just seemed to me like she had tried to write Stephen King, and I couldn't get that out of my head the whole time I was reading it, which was really distracting me. It might be because I hadn't long read Stephen King books at the time, but just there were so many similarities between the style, and I wasn't enjoying it purely because it felt like a copy and it felt predictable to me. There were certain things that were sort of unfolding early on, and I found myself guessing, trying to think of what was happening, and then 20 pages later I was like, okay, it was that character or so and so. I just didn't enjoy it. I know it's been relatively popular. I have seen quite a few negative reviews for this, especially from people that have similar reading styles to myself. I saw Samantha Leanne did a review of this one on Goodreads. I think she gave it 1 star, and I really did agree with the points that she raised. It wasn't interesting to me. I got 100 pages in. I've left my little Top Trumps bookmark in there. I might come back to this one, but I don't think I will anytime soon. If you enjoyed Chalk Man, definitely let me know down below if you think it's one that I should carry on reading. But for now, I don't plan on picking it up anytime soon. Guys, I really hope you've enjoyed the video. September was a good month for me. I managed to get through quite a lot of books, which I was really happy about, although there was a couple of DNFs, and I don't usually DNF. I try and avoid doing it. You know, shit happens, doesn't it? So what are you going to do? Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe if you've enjoyed this one, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.